Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I am excited and honored today to have the opportunity to have a really deep conversation with a former PGA Tour player and one of the best instructors in the country, Boyd Summerhays. Here's a little background on Boyd. Golf is in Boyd's blood. His grandfather, Press Summerhays, was the head golf coach at the University of Utah back in the day. Boyd's father, Lynn, played collegiate golf and for several years served as the president of the Utah Junior Golf Association and was on the USGA Committee. His uncle, Bruce Summerhays, is a Champions Tour winner and was also an accomplished golf instructor himself. And his younger brother, Daniel, played over 8 seasons on the PGA Tour, reaching as high as 53rd in the world rankings. As soon as he could walk, Boyd had a golf club in his hands. As a junior golfer, Boyd won over 75 junior and high school tournaments, numerous national junior events, and 3 junior world championships. Boyd was a 4-time American Junior Golf Association high school All-American, and at age 16 was ranked number 1 in the country and named the Golfweek Junior National Player of the Year. Boyd played his collegiate golf at famed Oklahoma State University. As a professional golfer, Boyd won over 20 events and competed in 29 PGA Tour events. He also played on the Korn Ferry Tour and the Tour in Canada during his 11-year professional career. At age 32, Boyd took all the lessons he learned playing and began teaching the game to others as an instructor. For the last 6 years, Boyd has instructed some of the top players on tour, including Wyndham Clark, Scott Harrington, his brother Daniel, and current 17th ranked player in the world, Tony Finau. But knowing Boyd, his greatest pride comes from teaching and watching his 3 kids thrive in the game of golf and in life. 18-year-old Preston, who is one of the best junior golfers in the country, and last year won the 2019 U.S. Junior Championship. His daughter Grace, who is also one of the top juniors in the country, and at 16 years old, became the youngest winner of the Utah State Women's Amateur Championship this past summer. And of course, his youngest son, Cam, who's on track to beat them all. So what a life so far, Boyd. Thanks for being here and welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Howard. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very excited to kind of dig deep with you. I've got a lot of questions I want to ask you in our short time today because it's going to fly by here. And in these questions, I really want to pick your brain about some of the key mental characteristics that you've witnessed both in yourself as a great young player and in those that you've worked with. So I'm going to start out with a really powerful first question, which is, what do you believe is the strongest mental attribute of a top performer or a champion at any level?
Self-belief. Self-belief comes from, seeing results, but it's also developed through, training and positive self-talk, positive imagery. Tiger Woods, in his opening book, How I Play Golf, he talked a little bit about that, self-belief was, results-based, but largely self-created as well. So great performers, the reason why they're able to pull off great feats or take on shots that most people would kind of shy away from is because they truly feel and believe that they can pull that off. And so, I've seen that over and over, that the guys that are willing to go for it, it's not that they're probably different than other people, but they just believe more in themselves, and that's what allows them to take those shots on, or those, moments in other sports. So yeah, I'd say self-belief for sure. And that's what I see in my kids. That's what I've seen in Tony and the other top players in the world, that a lot of people say, hey, man, top players in the world, they play so aggressive. Well, they're highly skilled, number one, but number two, they believe in themselves a lot, and they always think they're going to pull it off. Whether they do or not is not the important thing. It's that they think they're going to.
Right. That's fascinating that all the work, all the time out there, all the working out, everything that an athlete does, and then at the end of the day, to keep leveling up, it seems to come down to that one thing called self-belief, where you just know. You don't think anymore, you just know. So it's fascinating to get that kind of feedback from you, seeing so many top players in the world, and watching your own kids, perform at an extremely
Yeah,
high level. I mean, they definitely have some pedigree, as I read
yeah,
in the
for sure.
bio, which is also interesting. But at the end of the day, they've got to believe in those moments where it really matters most. So that's great to hear. So let's go back a little bit. Tell me a little bit about how you got started in golf and how it was nurtured into you when you were young.
So I had a great upbringing. I had two parents that loved me and gave me time. And my dad was a golf addict. My uncle Bruce, like you mentioned, is known for being the Champions Tour player, and most people think that he was the one that got me started in golf, or Daniel in golf, but that's not the case. My dad was a college golfer that just continued to have that passion for the game. So he has 7 kids. I'm one of 7 siblings, and he wanted a way to be able to spend time with us, but also still golf. And he started teaching us all. And so many
That's
times
awesome.
growing up at the local country club where we were members, we'd have 2 foursomes, and we'd play. I mean, several times a week with my sisters and brothers, and there ended up being 3 or 4 of us that did pursue it, and played college golf. My older brother David did, and Daniel obviously played on tour, and I did, and stayed in the game. But yeah, I just think that it was my dad's love of the game and
Hmm.
passion, and his passion for me and my siblings too. Like, he was a great dad, wanted to
Hmm.
be with us, and that was kind of how he could do both. And I think I see that a little bit of myself now, is that it is my job. I love the game, and I wanted my kids to love it too. But you can't force that on them. But I was really
Right.
hoping that they'd take a liking to the game, because then I'd have the best of both worlds. We'd be able to be together a lot and be in a game that I loved, my whole life.
That's awesome. And what's great about your family is I mean, I've seen it up close and personal. We both live in the same area. I'm
Yeah.
down the street from where you're the head teacher, right down from my house. And so, and I've seen Preston play in a lot of tournaments. But you've done a great job. You and your wife have done an amazing job. Allowing that passion in them to come out where it seems incredibly natural. When you were young, did you ever feel any obligation, or was that just a natural passion for you?
I think my dad did a good job. I mean, I have an advantage of, I'm a coach now, and I'm fairly young. I'm 41, but when I started teaching Preston, he was 9 when he really wanted to get really, really good, or play in his own tournaments. But he was playing when he was 3 and 4 and 5. But I took from my dad that, we were always having matches against my siblings or my friends. We were having competitions, and he made it interesting for sure. Taught us how to compete, and kept it. Um, I wouldn't say light, because we wanted to be good at it, but he did it in a way. I mean, human beings, we love to compete, we love to
Hmm.
test ourselves, and so he put us in all those kind of environments all the time. And so I was able to. I knew that worked. You look on tour, and a lot of them are just, they play matches during their practice rounds.
Right.
When they're home training, they want to go up against other great players, and train against other skilled, professionals. So my dad did the same thing. He was always trying to put me against bigger, faster, stronger kids.
Mm.
It pushed me to catch them. Once I caught them, he moved me up in another, age group, and it was always interesting for me. It was my passion, and I would say my dad did a great job of. It is hard. I understand my dad a lot better now. I
Hmm.
think when I was a kid, he worked with me until I was 16 or 17, and then it, working with your kid, I'm not going to lie, it is very difficult. And I don't suggest that parents do it. It works for me and my kids, but I think it's
Hmm.
because I have gone through it as a kid, and
Right.
having my dad coach me, so I could take the good things he did, the great things he did, and then also maybe tweak some of the things that I think, well, could have been a little bit different. Because I think letting your kids maintain a passion for it is massive. I feel like, people look at me. I spend a lot of my day sun up, sun down at the golf course. I think people consider me a hard worker. I know that people think that at times, but I love it. And so I don't look at it that way all the
Hmm.
time. Sure, there's days that it is work. I'm not going to lie, but for the most part, I just truly love it. I love the game. I love the challenge of it. And I did as a player, even when I was struggling, I was always like, okay, we're going to figure this out. Yeah, I like the challenge. And as a coach, I'm the same way. And so I knew that if my kids had a work ethic and a passion, that was going to be a pretty deadly combination. And then if I could just give him the skill sets through the technique and the coaching, those three things, good skills and technique, a work ethic, and a passion, it's hard not to be successful with those three things working for you.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's interesting because I do see a lot of kids who are sort of pushed by parents in certain circumstances, and it only goes so far before it eventually sort of flames out. It's just something that has to be a natural love to when you get to higher levels, especially that natural love has to be there.
Yeah, exactly, because you won't survive the downs. When Preston came to Arizona from Utah, he was already known as a really good player in Utah, the best player there at his age. When he came here, he didn't want to play in his age group. He wanted to challenge himself like my dad did with me. And so when he was 14, he played against the 15 and 18-year-old kids. I was okay with that because he had won so much in his life. I wasn't too worried about it hurting his confidence. That's what he wanted to do. I knew it was going to push him. If he hadn't won a lot, I wouldn't have wanted him or allowed him to do that. But when he moved up as a 14-year-old in the 15 to 18, he never took a top 10. So he went that whole year with people not even thinking he was good because he was 14, but when you're in a 15 to 18, no one cares how old you are. You're in the tournament and you're not taking top 10. And he actually had a moment where he got really, it's hard not to get discouraged when you go several months with what seems like not anything to show for it. But I always tell my kids, hard work is your best chance to succeed. And that's just what we do. It takes what it takes. You just do what you have to do. And eventually it does pay off because through those struggles, he loved the game so much that he kept going and kept going through the tough times. I mean, for him not to take a top 10 in a 15 to 18 division is pretty hard for some people to believe, knowing that the next year he was the best player and 16-year-old and 17-year-old but that year I feel like was huge for his career because he was not recognized as one of the better players. He did experience a lot of failure, and it was really obvious to me that he loved the game and he was super competitive. Two things: you have a passion and you're competitive. You'll hang in the game when times get tough, because some kids, they like it when they're succeeding, and then once they go through some tough times and they go to some big tournaments out of state and play against more skilled players or tougher tournaments, they get discouraged really quick. Well, I feel like I feel like because it is my kids' passion that they've been able to get through those little lulls. And that's, to me, normal progression. I think that's one thing I've always seen, is that when I see my kids appear to be struggling, that's so healthy. That's so normal, because you don't want to go your whole junior career without having any ups and downs. What happens when you go to college and you have ups and downs? You don't know how to handle it. Preston knows how to get himself out of a funk. He knows not to panic. He's had 2 or 3 different funks through his little career so far that he's been able to get through every time, because he shows up, still loves the game, and he knows it'll pass. So
yeah. And that's what's interesting is, when you push yourself against better players and you're willing to step into that, it takes a lot of faith to do that, because like you said, he went winless for a while, but he was demonstrating a strong intention to wanting to compete. And so when he wasn't seeing results, the intention was being built. And so when, the next year, when he had 1 year behind him of competing against older kids, all of a sudden him feeling more comfortable in that space and having the experience behind him, boom. So, and I think that's a great trait of all great athletes that I've witnessed, is that when they push themselves without being worried about short-term non-execution or not winning, you still have to know that work, you're gaining momentum that you can't see yet. And I think that stepping up in class, and like you said, you wouldn't have done it if you hadn't won already at that age, because you can push somebody a little quicker, and then you can hurt their confidence by having them up against, a higher level caliber field.
And you were talking about how, whether it's, my kid's passion, and that's important. And then I think the role of a parent too, it's so tricky, because your kid can love it, but a kid is not going to love getting his his ass chewed out after every round, for lack of a better word, or having to go through the whole round and why did you do this? Why did you do that? We've both been at tournaments together. We both know this, where parents have handled things the wrong way. And I've gone up to a kid and told them to keep their head up, even though it's not even someone I wasn't currently working with, because I knew what that felt like. I knew they knew what was coming in the car ride home. I knew what was coming in the car ride home. And that hurts. And I think that is one thing with my kids is I feel like they've already proven to me they have a passion for it. They're out there all the time. And it's my job not to do things that are going to put so much pressure on their performance or act in a way that they can start dreading the sides that they shouldn't have to deal with. And you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So we have a 10-minute rule. After a round, we got 10 minutes. And I'm their coach. I feel like I'm an expert in what I do. Most parents are not experts in what they do. They're experts in a different field, whether an accountant, a lawyer, a doctor, they specialize in something different. Well, they probably shouldn't have that 10-minute conversation. That should be left to Howard. That should be left to their swing coach, right? To have those conversations with their players. And the parents, honestly, are supposed to be there for financial support, emotional support, and be there through, especially the downs. Your kids are going to be fine through the ups, through the good times, but your kids need you so much on those bad days that they're always trying to please us. They want to make us proud.
That's exactly right.
We need to be upbeat when they play poor. And that's huge for my kids. They truly know that play good or bad, they're going to be fine with me.
Yeah,
as long as they act good. I'm strict on how they act. You know that. I'm strict on how they act. I will not
have to worry about that with your kids, though. You don't have to worry about that. One of the things that I think parents underestimate, and I think this is global, is how much kids are looking for the approval and want to please their parents. And I think it's underestimated. And when they're pressured in sport and they lose the fun for it. I coached club baseball for 8 years. And one of the things that was key especially when they were younger, like 9 and 10, was number one was we were going to have fun. Like that was going to be the first thing on their mind when they went home. Like I had a blast day, win, lose or draw. I enjoyed playing baseball. And I think in a game where there's so much failure like baseball or golf, it's really important to remember the joy of the game. And even when it doesn't go your way, I think optimism, for parents that are listening, optimism is key. To always know the sun's going to rise tomorrow and you got another opportunity to go out and grind it out and figure it out. And that to me is part of the fun of sports and the sport of golf, is that it's constantly testing you to get up again, go out there and push forward. And this is what makes professionals that I've worked with and you worked with the greatest at their level, is they only know one direction. They don't, the only reason they're looking back is for information. They're not looking back for woulda, coulda, shoulda. They're looking, what can I learn to take me further for where I want to go? And I think the younger you can learn that attribute, the better off they're going to be. So when you were young and playing, how did you deal with setbacks? I mean, was it harder for you, or did you have times when you struggled when you got to number one in the world at such a young age? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider that I did struggle at all until when I was a little bit older, because when you look at, sure, I probably lost some tournaments that I could have won and stuff like that. But in general, I was progressing every year and doing some great things. I ended up going to Oklahoma State, and then I went and took a break for 2 years, went on a 2-year Mormon mission. And when I came back, it was rough. My son, he's not going to go on a mission. He wants to be a professional golfer. And if you're going to be a professional golfer, that's not a decision, in my opinion, that is conducive to that. So he'll be able to just keep his momentum going. But at the time, that was the decision that I made. And when I came back, my game was really rough. And I was trying to play for Oklahoma State on one of the toughest courses in the world in the conditions we qualified under. Heavy winds in Stillwater, Oklahoma. Coach Holder always had the greens at 13, 14. You could put them off the greens. Wow. When I came back, that wasn't a great place to reestablish my confidence. And no doubt, I did lose my confidence. It was rough. It got really bad. I shot a 50 on the back nine at Karsten Creek. I couldn't get the ball in play. Everything just looked a lot different. And came back in June.
But you said
and
2 years you were off?
2 years.
I
Yeah,
mean,
2 years didn't play golf. Yeah. And so it didn't matter at the start. I could tell my brain like, hey, you haven't played for 2 years. These bad shots, you'll get the hang of it. But eventually, you just hit enough bad shots, and it gets in the memory bank,
well,
right? It sears in there.
I just want to say one thing on that, because that's
Yeah,
really significant what you're talking about. I think what gets underestimated a lot from a lot of players, both at the high school, college level, and at the pro level, is how much intention, work, and awareness is built into scoring, the ability to get the
yeah,
ball in the hole, and how that slowly builds over time. And I'm not
yeah.
saying that you can't take a break or a week or two or even a month where you put the clubs down. I think that's fine. But
Right.
I think that edge, that high level awareness edge of getting the ball in the hole, has to be respected in a certain way. So when you do have something like COVID here, where some players were off for a while, like I really think it's underestimated how long that
Yeah, it
awareness
did
level
affect
builds.
people for sure. Yeah, it
Yeah,
did. And
but you're saying
I
2 years for you. I mean, that's
yeah,
incredible. You know,
yeah. And so I think that was my toughest time, is when I came back, and then I got married quickly after I got back from Argentina. And I love my mission. It's made me, looking back now, I think, wow, what an experience. Like I worked with so many different people. I got so used to being around people, different personalities. And I felt like that changed me as a
Mm,
person. And I saw things
awesome.
on my mission in the poorest parts of
Hmm.
Argentina, where it just kind of changed me as a human being for sure, and
Wow.
helped me in coaching. But at the
Hmm.
time when I came back, I really struggled. And so it was frustrating. I still was able to play good enough to keep my spot on the team, but I wasn't even a shadow of what I was before.
Hmm.
And so I think I went through that struggle of those moments where I'd go practice, I'd come home, I'd tell my wife, I got it. Okay, we're back on track. I figured it out. And the next day, no, it's not there. And my wife didn't know the game. She wasn't a golfer, and it was that constant week after week and month after month for several months, where every day I thought I was going to get it, because I had high self-belief. I had a history of success, and I had self-confidence. And every day I thought it was going to be the day that I was going to figure it out. And I've told this experience to my kids, and they know this. And so when they have their struggles for a tournament or two or a month or 2 months, I tell them, hey, sometimes these slumps are going to last even longer than that if you intend on doing it for a living. You look at any tour pro, besides maybe, well, not, you can't even say Tiger Woods. He's been through it too, but
Yep.
you will go through these lows. And so I
Hmm.
think that was my lowest moment in my career. And I think because it was a passion, and I had developed a work ethic, and I had previous success, that I kept pushing forward. But I always thought I was going to get it back. And then
Hmm.
eventually I just did. It was just a really slow process. And I've been around Padre Harrington, where he wins 3 out of 4 majors, and he almost wins another. And all of a sudden he goes 7 years without winning.
Hmm.
And if you're around that guy, he's so confident, so positive. And he
Hmm.
was quoted after he won at Honda, he was like, I always thought I was going to find it that next day. He just had that optimism, but it didn't happen that way. And so
Right.
I think people get discouraged. I think resilience, and I call it frustration tolerance. I have tried to help my kids. I push their buttons and test them a lot. And I tell them, you want to have your threshold of how hard it is to get you frustrated a lot higher than other players, because some
Wow.
kids and some players, a few things happen, a few
And they're
bad
gone
lip outs, and
mentally.
they've
Yeah.
lost their minds. And I'm
They've
like,
lost their
kids, come
mind,
on,
and they've lost a
you got
couple
to be tougher than
strokes.
that.
Right.
Yeah,
And a
exactly.
couple
So
strokes over 2 or 3 days is a lot
yeah,
of space
yeah.
between you and the
So
top.
so the low times, in my opinion, you build up this will and this
Hmm.
frustration tolerance and this belief that you can get through it. So you do look at people that either come from tough upbringings, or they've gone through slumps before. I mean, Henrik Stenson had to have come out the other side better for it once he did, and learned. Lee Westwood, and you got to respect those people that can get through those slumps, but it builds up will.
Yeah, and I think that's why we love sports so much, is that we watch these journeys. And in golf, you have a field of 100, you're 150 to 1, basically, when it comes to winning. It's not like in
Yeah.
baseball where it's, one team against another and it's a
Yeah.
50-50 shot to win. I mean, you enter tournaments
Right.
in golf, it's 150 to 1 statistically. Well, you
Yeah.
throw in the talent levels, it gets a little different, but
Right. Right.
um, but you're right. The hard times build it, and that's why I think golf is such an incredible sport to refine and test your will and your determination to come through. And that brings me to one of your top players who's done unbelievably well. I mean, you've coached Tony Finau for years now. How many years have you taught him?
We're going on our 8th year.
Wow, 8 years. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And he's arguably one of the best players in the world for sure. His consistency is amazing. His attitude is unreal. I mean, what are some of the things you've learned from Tony over the years in coaching him and watching him and his success?
Yeah, I think Tony, a little bit of what I talked about, how you come up, right? He came from he loved his upbringing. He didn't have anything, but he had everything. He had loving parents, but he didn't have anything. He had to, save up money to go to tournaments, drive across the country. He didn't get anything handed to him for sure. And, he's Polynesian. Polynesians do not play golf. They play rugby. Right. They play football. Yeah. His dad's trying to teach him a sport that he really was just learning out of reading out of magazines and books. But, Tony turned pro at 17, and he had a lot of people that didn't think he should. And, that was the decision he and his family made. But he had a lot of failure. It took him 7 years to get on tour. He went through Q school 7 times before he was successful. Mike Weir went through incredible. 7 or 8 times.
Yeah.
It's pretty common. I mean, we see on tour these Justin Thomases, Jordan Spieth that are just, they are superstars. But there's a lot of players on tour that Xander Schauffele, he played 4 years of college golf. It took him that long to get out there, right? And people progress at different levels, but there are a lot of stories where people they keep on, just coming back for more. Tony kept missing Q school and kept on coming back because he believed he is a very confident person.
Yes,
but you can tell it helped him. And I felt like I told him this when he got on the Korn Ferry Tour. I'm like, you're really experienced. You've played 7 years on the mini tours. You've been through 7 Q schools. You've traveled the country trying to get your card. You've traveled, in some cases, the world playing events. You're a seasoned rookie on the Korn Ferry Tour. Well, he wins and he gets his PGA Tour card. PGA Tour, Tony, you're not a rookie. You're a 7-8 year
That's awesome.
pro. Yeah, and it was just perspective. And he had been through so many ups and downs. Missing a cut or two does not faze Tony. If you follow him on social media, he goes through these little lulls and he does not panic because he's been through worse. He's been through 7 years it took him to get to the PGA Tour. And in some cases, it's who he is as a person. He's been through so much that he gets out here. How hard it's going to be hard for him to get too negative out here. He's playing for so much money. He's been able to change his life, his family's life. He's playing in the most beautiful courses and cities in the world. He has a great perspective, but that perspective came from his upbringing, how he came up, and through 7 years of struggle to get to the PGA Tour. So
it's interesting. In this world of social media where everything is edited to its highlights, and these kids are absorbing this stuff. One thing I've learned in working at the top level in all sports that has just been resounding is there are no shortcuts. You have to put your time in. You have to, and people don't realize behind the lights what goes on, the amount of time, the amount of work, the amount of sacrifice. And they just see people great, making a bunch of money. Oh, they got the great life. They have no idea what it took to get there. And so I think that younger players a lot of time need a lot of perspective on really what it's going to take to keep moving into that funnel, that tighter and tighter funnel up the ladder to greatness if they want to get there. So I have to ask you this question, being that we're on the eve of the Masters. I truly, again, Boyd, I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Oh yeah, you're great. Yeah. It's fun.
Tony last year played in the final round with Tiger when he won.
Yeah.
He got to watch and be a witness to 18 holes of watching him work his way physically and energetically through that round of golf to arguably have one of the best comebacks in all of sports. What kind of feedback did Tony have? What did he learn from that round with Tiger? Because a lot of guys who actually are in the final group in majors end up the next few years breaking through. And I think a lot of it has to do with that experience that they have firsthand, witnessing that energy and what takes place.
Looking back on it, probably a couple things. I think that, he saw, obviously that could be the biggest stage that golf has really ever had. Its biggest superstar having that big of a drought, people not thinking he'd really ever win again, let alone a major. And then he wins on the biggest stage in golf at the Masters. And those crowds it was incredible. And that's his childhood hero too, golfing hero.
Wow.
So,
wow.
The one thing that's different about Tiger's pretty relaxed in practice rounds. He's nice. He's friendly. Tony said that literally there was a wait like on the fifth tee, and he said, "Hey, how are the kids?" And Tiger was like, "They're good." That's the only thing that to Tony. Tony loves Tony, but Tiger, everyone can comfort level, right? Lee Trevino wanted to talk all the time. He talks with Teddy, Scott the whole time. Some people perform better when it looks like they're a little bit more casual about it. Tiger Woods, no way. He's so intense. And I think Tony, not that Tony would copy that, but he knew how much it meant to Tiger. He's super intense. And then I would say you look at he knows he can do it. Tony, until number 12, Fran hit it in the water. Brooks hit it in the water. Tony hit it in the water. And Tiger went for the middle of the green, where if he misses it a little short, gets confused with the wind, it goes in the bunker. And I think that was a huge thing, that Tiger was drawing the ball on number 12. Tony and Fran were kind of hitting it left to right, but the miss actually, and usually your brain, when you see water on the right, you want to start it left and hit a cut back into it. But Race Creek, it's not like that. The creek goes further up, so it's not. You want to draw it, so if you overdraw it goes further, and you're safe. You're on dry land, right? And if you barely overcut it, it's coming up short. And so I think maybe he learned that a little bit. Probably on Sunday, even Tony is a great fader of the ball. That's his stock shot. That's a very comfortable shot. And he did not hit a bad shot. He came up 1 yard short. And that kind of made it to where Tony, he was forced to play perfect coming in, and he didn't. He had an eagle putt on 15 that he missed. But I think just the little details, and Tiger, he talked about number 12. He said, this is how detailed he is. And I try to go through, when I learn something, I try to point it out to my students and my kids, say, hey, Tiger hit it way right on 11, had a gap. He overdrew it. He felt like when he came out of the trees, and he said to himself, wow, that wind held it up. And so he knew on 12, most likely the wind was a little more off the left than people thought. And then he had the presence of mind. He's so comfortable in those situations. Things are moving normal or slow to him, right?
Right.
And so he heard the roars. He knew guys were hitting it in the water without really seeing their shots, right? And so he was quoted as saying, I was very aware that guys were misjudging that wind. So I decided to go more left in case there was more wind in and off the left.
Wow.
And that's experience. And that's just presence of mind too. The more you get in those situations, things are just slower. They're more normal. And I think that Tony drew a lot out of that experience, because he may never have a bigger moment than that. Playing with Tiger Woods, trying to go for his 15th major championship, his comeback, like you said, I think most people will go on to say that's the greatest comeback in sports. He was in that moment,
right?
In that all that pressure and that energy. And so the next time he got in contention at the PGA Championship in a major, very comfortable to him, very comfortable at the President's Cup. He performed well. And it's just, I say with my kids, I'm always trying to make them uncomfortable so that they eventually are always comfortable. And I think Tiger Woods is just comfortable in all situations. He's seen it all. And I think,
statement.
My kids, the more and more, like it's uncomfortable at age 12 to try for the U.S. Amateur qualifier.
Yeah, right.
With bigger, faster kids.
Right.
It's uncomfortable
but it resets your perspective.
To go throw yourself in playing with tour pros when you're 13.
Right.
My kids have always put themselves out there in what seems like uncomfortable situations. And now I feel like even Preston playing at Winged Foot and playing, he wanted to play. I asked him who he wanted to play with. His practice rounds, he wanted to play with the best players in the world. He felt very comfortable with them. And at Winged Foot, he performed like he was very comfortable, because he's been willing to put himself in what would seem like uncomfortable situations.
That's amazing. And that comment right there, that just to be able to put yourself in more uncomfortable situations so you feel more comfortable
Yeah.
in general outside of that, or when you do it again the second time. So, and that's that pushing yourself so that
100%.
you keep stretching your awareness. I want to go back quickly to the comment that you made that where they had a weight on 5, I think you said, and he
Yeah.
started up a conversation. And it wasn't obviously Tiger being rude. It's just the way that
No, he
gets
wasn't
into
at
that
all. Yeah.
hyper aware state. He doesn't want to be
Yeah.
distracted from that hyper aware state. And I think you made a couple really interesting comments about him hearing the roars, hearing the fact that a couple guys were going to be in the water were in the water on 12 when he was on 10 or coming up 11 or wherever he was, that he
Yeah, he was
heard
on
those
11. Yeah.
he was on 11. So he knew that information was being registered, and in a game that is so finite like golf, him just thinking, I'm going to move my eye line just a little left on
Yeah.
12 just to make sure, and position himself. Again, that's that hyper state of awareness, but again, one of the greatest athletes of all time in one of the greatest moments.
Yeah.
So very, 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 very interesting. So speaking of your kids, let me ask you this. What have your kids taught you about success and being great at the game? What have you learned from them?
The thing I've learned the most is that they're different. I owe a lot to a lot of the tour players that I've taught or been around. It's been the greatest thing to coach Tony, who is more like Preston. Preston is extremely, extremely calm. If anything, he needs to set up practice situations that are intense enough, like money games or and I'm not trying to promote that, but like he's always competing to keep his interest, right? Because
right.
when the stakes are high, that's when he feels focused.
Right.
And he's been like that. And Preston can be a little spacey though. Tony can be a little spacey. Dustin Johnson can be a little spacey.
Yep.
What I learned is that everybody's different. And then you got these players that are high strung and they never miss any details. That's more like Grace. And so what I've learned from my kids is that I let them keep their same personality, who they are at the core, because you are who you are. You can improve your personality. You can improve our characteristics, right? But we are who we are at the core. Yep. Preston's always been someone that isn't emotional. He doesn't panic. He doesn't tend to over worry. That is his personality. That's a blessing. Unless it can be a little bit of a curse when it's a normal day at McDowell Mountain or Silverleaf when he's practicing, and you may miss a little details in the practice. Gracie, on the other hand, she was so intense, and that was her personality. I mean, fiery, so fiery.
Wow.
And so her practice sessions were so intense. She had her golf journal out. She wrote every note. Everything I'd say would just go in the book. Everything she felt like she learned, and she'd always keep it with her. Well, she got better really fast. Well, that was her intensity was her strength in practice and getting her skills better, but it was her curse when she tried to compete. At the beginning, there was a tournament where she led by 4 shots at El Canto, and she bogeys the first hole, and she was already nervous. I could tell. And I know that is a part of her progression. So we get done with the round, and she's like, "Are we going to go?" I said, "Babe, you're going to be close to winning." She goes, "Dad, I shot 77. I said, "Honey, you had the low score by 4 shots the first day. You had shots to spare." Tiger always says he wants to lead. Some players will say, "Oh, I want to come from behind. There's less pressure." Someone that's comfortable, so it's obvious you would want the lead. That means you can still make mistakes, right? And win. Exactly. But Grace hadn't learned that. So she had a tendency to overtry, to panic, to get in her own way, whatever you want to call it, right? There's a lot of other ways to say it. Beating yourself. It took her a year or two to just be calm, just play. We call it just play, right? You train with intensity, but when you go play, we try to train smart and intense, and we try to play blank, try to play, with very little in the mind. So it took her 2 years, and that's when she really started to turn heads, because she was very good when she was 13. It didn't look like she was good in tournaments because she hadn't learned the art of playing tournament golf and controlling her emotions, not getting upset when something bad happened. Preston can hit a bad shot.
Right.
And this is what he did, he learned from Tony, is that Preston had the advantage of playing with tour pros and seeing how many great shots they hit, but how many bad shots they hit. And Tony, bless his heart, that he is the type of person that he get to where, okay, if Tony Finau is a top 10 player in the world and he can hit some bad shots and act like nothing happened, I can do it too. And his biggest wins in his career have always had moments where he's hit a horrific shot or made a really bad mistake, and he recovers. And I can think of 2 huge ones. His first Utah State Amateur title, he gets to number 10, and they put the tees up, and he hits it out of bounds. He does not hit the ball out of bounds. He hits it out of bounds, loses the hole, so he's only 1 up.
Wow.
Hits the fairway on 11, and then he tops his 3-wood on the second shot on a par 5. And I told my wife, I said, honey, I know the guy that's playing him probably thinks, oh, man, because Preston had a chance to be the youngest ever, beat Tony's record and his uncle Daniel Summerhays' record. And I said, honey, he has no idea who Preston is. Like, he could care less. He just topped that ball. He's going to go find it and go hit it up on the green and try to get in the hole as quick as he can. And Preston birdied 4 out of the next 6 holes after he had hit it out of bounds on 10 and topped a 3-wood on 11, because he just gets over things fast. And same thing at the US Junior. He was in total control of the match, and or 40 feet. And Preston had a wedge in. He's a great wedge player. And he misjudged the wind a little bit. He went long of the green, chipped short, chipped it to 5 feet inside of Bo Jin. Preston's putting for bogey. Bo Jin's putting for birdie. Bo misreads it, hits it to 6 feet. Preston makes the 35-footer for bogey when he was in the middle of the fairway, just 15 minutes earlier.
Right.
And he goes and Bo misses his putt, and they tie with bogeys, and he goes on to win the next hole and win 2 up. But that potentially, it could have unraveled. And if you see the live coverage, he never lost sight that he could win the hole. Brad Faxon literally said, hey, I think Preston should just cut his losses and go on to the next hole. And I'm like, that's not my son. He knows he can make that putt. And Bo Jin technically could 3-putt from 35 feet. And so he just doesn't get flustered in the moment. And so I've learned that from what you asked me, what have I learned from my kids, is that let them be who they are. Don't say to Grace, hey, be calm and play free like Preston. Or say, Preston, concentrate like Grace in practice, and take every note and
that's
over,
great.
That is the thing I've learned, is that you as a coach or a parent need to let your kid, And so Grace models a little bit more of like a Jordan Spieth that has that fire. You can see he gets ticked and then he gets over it, right?
Exactly.
And Preston is more like, he looks more like probably Tony or Dustin Johnson, that really don't get upset on a golf course. You don't see Preston get that frustrated, So I think that's what they've taught me, is that let them be who they are at the core, show them a few players that are like their personality. And then I think a few other things that they've taught me too is that, and I think it's just from coaching and playing myself the game for as long as I did too, is that, get out of the way. I've been at some of my kids' biggest moments on the bag. And when Preston won his second Utah State Amateur, there was 2 putts to get to the finals that he had to make on the last hole, else he's done. I didn't read the putt. I trusted him. It didn't matter what the read was. It's like he needed to be sure of what he thought the read was.
Wow.
And so in those moments,
can you restate that again? Because that's really profound. You said it didn't matter what
I
the
just
read
think
was.
that in the No, I mean, he has this, and I've documented a lot of my kids' stuff throughout the years. You can just go back and look on my social media, and there was a putt. He had, once again, he's just resilient. He was 5 up.
You trusted, but the point is, you trusted
go.
that. You got out of the way. You didn't need to put your worry over him. You trusted what he was going to do. That's my point. That's what I'm trying to.
Well, and I understand psychology. He was 5 up with 8 holes to go. He loses a 5-up lead. They're even with 1 hole to go. He hits it to 60 feet. He lags that 15 feet short. Hits a terrible lag putt. Well, it has a lot of break, but it was not a great lag putt. His opponent putts off the fringe to 4 feet, 3.5 feet. Preston has to make it, or else the guy can make the 3.5-footer to win. And this putt has 4.5, 5 feet of break, and you never see me near him. He says something to me, and I just say, yeah, I like that. It was just generally close. I mean, It didn't matter. I needed him to be 100% committed. And I know that about sport in that big of a moment where he's going to go blank pretty much. He's talked about that. He doesn't even really remember. Sometimes he does a left-handed fist pump, a right-handed fist pump. He's really random. He's like, Dad, I don't know. I was just in the moment. And
that's awesome.
I think it's very natural for parents and coaches and caddies in the what would appear to be the most pressure situations to intervene too much. If I think my son can be the number 1 player in the world someday, I got to believe that he's got to have surreal self-confidence, right? I want him to know the read on the last hole. And so I just stayed out of the way. Same thing with my daughter. She had a huge putt to win a critical hole in her final match to become the youngest as well in the Utah Women's State Amateur. And I stayed away. There was no chance I was going to get in there and give a read that was different than hers and cast doubt in her mind, because it doesn't really matter that it's a perfect read. It's a matter that she got there, right? And so I think parents choke, caddies choke, coaches choke, players choke. Let the player choke. Don't help them choke. Stay out of the way. Let them
trust them.
Let them do it. Yes, you get what I mean. Like, I'm not saying that Preston or Grace was going to choke, but I'm saying let them do their thing. Right?
There's a certain destiny that has to unfold for them, unfettered.
For sure.
And I think that's the art of what you know so well, and you know it because you've been through it as a kid yourself and playing at the highest level. And boy, are they fortunate to have you, as their parent.
Well, there's mental cues too. There was another putt where it was a 10-footer and he needed to make it to stay even in the match. And I just say, do what you do, P. Do what you do.
Yeah, that's
he knows what that means. He's made putts his whole life. Just do what you do.
That's like a vote of confidence, and that just
do what you do, and he'll have those mantras. Do what you do. Yeah,
and that goes back to that positivity. You talk about your kids teaching you the resilience to, especially Preston, to get over things and not let it bother you. And then there's Brad Faxon telling him he should just go on to the next hole. And then there is making a 35-footer for bogey, right? And saving a critical shot there. But I think I like to extrapolate things into life too. It's like the quicker you can get over something and refocus on what your intention is of what you want to create for yourself, whether it's in sport or life, the quicker it happens for you. So I think a lot of times golf gives us so many great messages for life, right? In the challenges,
sure.
Even what you said earlier about pushing yourself to the next level, being vulnerable, willing to take maybe not being successful, but learning and expanding your class and your awareness about what you can eventually do. Same thing in life. Go on that interview, whether you get the job or not, go through the process.
Right.
Or ask that girl or that guy out. It may not work the first time, but you'll go through it and you'll realize you survived it, and you can do it again until you accomplish it. So these are some things that I like to pull out for life, but those are great things that talking about your kids in the moment and what they've been able to accomplish is just amazing. And that brings me to kind of, as we get ready to get down and wind down and close here, just a couple more questions for you. But
yeah, no problem.
What's the one critical thing that you'd like to tell any young player who wants to be successful at this game at a high level, what they should be thinking about?
Yeah, so I have some rules with my kids and students at a young age. Number one is no excuses, be accountable. Like, I'm trying to figure out a simple way to help my kids become mentally tough. And I say, okay, number one, don't make excuses. Don't make excuses.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, excuses are just a form of not taking ownership, right?
Yep.
Yeah. 100%. And then number two, no negative self-talk, no negative body language.
That's one of mine.
Is three. Yeah. And then number four, we're not big believers in luck. If we want, I have no problem with an athlete or a human being believing that they're lucky. I feel like I'm lucky. I always did as a player. I thought I was lucky. And because of that, I always saw things happen good for me. So when something bad happened to me, it didn't bother me because I'm like, oh, geez, I got that bounce. Same thing in life. I think I tend to feel like I'm lucky or fortunate or blessed, or grateful, whatever you want to say. But I tell my kids skill sets in the long run determine the end result, not luck. And so if you want to think you're lucky, that's great because that's giving you an advantage. You feel like you have an edge. But when my kids, I challenge my students and my kids, when you think you have get a bad break, I want you to break it down to me. And I know I come off as I'm known as a supportive parent and a supportive coach. I'm tough. I expect a ton out of my kids, and
it's great.
And so my kids had to come to me and explain to me their bad break. And pretty soon they didn't like coming to me about a bad break, a plugged lie. Okay. For example, Howard, this is someone plugs in the face of a lip of a bunker. My first question would be, okay, what club did you hit? Okay, you hit a sand wedge. It was into the wind. Okay, the RPM, the spin on that is 10,000 to 11,000. Okay. Did you know in the practice round that this course there's some courses that the banks are really firm. There's some that are soft. Just talk it through and cut the BS, right? And pretty soon it's like, son, it wasn't a bad break. You don't know how to flight a wedge shot. Let's learn to flight a wedge shot so it doesn't rise up on you and it won't plug in the lip, right? And so you cut through the BS, and pretty soon they start catching themselves like, that isn't a bad break, And I've even been, to the point where Preston 2 years ago felt like he had one bad break. We could only think of one bad break, hitting a cart path. Howard, where's the dang cart path? It's in the rough. It's, give me a break. Like, I don't want to hear that. The wind switched on me. The wind switches all the time. That's a normal occurrence. That's not a bad break. And so my kids do not make excuses, and they don't believe in bad luck. And so the one bad break that Preston had actually ended up being very inconsequential. It was at Greyhawk in an interclub match. I would hate for my bad break to be at the Masters in the final round on the 18th hole or something like that. Sometimes your bad breaks don't even matter. Yeah. And so you have to kind of cut through that. And so
I'm a huge believer in this. Like I don't believe there's good luck or bad luck. I believe there's fortunate and unfortunate situations, but here's kind of where I see it, which is very much in line with the way you see it, which is that when you have an intent to accomplish something, my belief is not only do all your actions and energy that you're putting out go work to create it, but I believe divinity kind of knows what we're looking to create and how we're looking to express, and it's helping us. And so those situations are there to offer information that we need to whether it's getting over that particular incident and not letting it bother you, or like what you said, hey, what club did you hit? Or what are you doing over there, in the rough near where the cart path is to begin with? Or how to just accept the situation in general. And if you believe in bad luck or good luck, you're going to find it, because if you have a bunch of good breaks, you're going to think, now it's got to even out. That's not the case at all. I worked with one player who thought he got a lot of bad breaks, and I said, well, why don't you start looking at it like it's not a break or a bad break? It's just what happens, and you're going to face it with intensity and acceptance. And the minute that he did that, Boyd, it changed. It was 100%. Like life didn't need to show that lesson anymore. And
I love that. They're not looking for good luck or bad luck. I love that. Yeah. Not trying to see something.
Right. They're looking at it like life's feeding them information, and it's all, you work on that kind of relationship with life, and all of a sudden you realize, wow, life is really working with me the more I see that. And that's going to help me understand why things happen and to accept them quicker. And that's, like you said, we talked about Preston, that's what allows you to get through it. And I think, your son has just a greater sense of faith in life, which is really powerful. So, and I think is a mark of a champion. So that's great. So
I would say too, Howard, you're asking me what advice I give. So I do share that with kids. And when I do corporate events, five main rules. I have more. I have 10. But the easiest one to follow, and you'd be pretty much a good mental player. No excuses, no negative self-talk, no negative body language. The concept of good luck and bad luck. I mean, give me a break. It's skill sets that determine the outcome, how skilled you are, right? And number 5, get over bad shots immediately. And, and then I would say, as far as training, the best advice I could give is that we are products of our environment. It would be foolish for me to say that my kids, me being in a golfing family, didn't benefit me, and that I didn't learn certain things on tour from my own family. And it would be foolish for me to say that my kids don't have an advantage of having me take that experience and put that into their life. And then I'm a golf coach that can give them some sound technique, can make sure they have the resources to have good training, facilities and go to the right tournaments. Or the one thing I think is the biggest thing beyond that is who they train with. Don't want to be the best right now. If Preston or Grace say they want to be the best players in the world, they're going to be the best in the world eventually. To get there, they need people beating their brains in all the time. Exactly, and you learn from being against better players. So the best advice I would give is to get around the best players you can play against out, and just iron sharpens iron. We always say that in our family and with students, iron sharpens iron. And that's just the truth. And so I'm
sorry, you cut out for a second. So you're saying get around better players? Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. So
no, it's not. It's just the internet.
So the biggest thing outside of, golf course or proper training facilities is training or competing against the best players and the best courses you
There you
can.
go.
Those
Keep
two
pushing
things are going to tell you
yourself.
whether you're
Yep.
good. Okay.
Or show you the gap.
So I had no problem.
Yeah.
I had no problem. So Preston played Junior World when he was 14 or 15 at Torrey Pines. Supposedly it was like low in stars or points. At this time, I'm not joking, Howard. I have no clue what stars and points are. And I was, I did this for a living. I didn't care. I told Preston, son, they're going to play. They played a U.S. Open there, and they're going to play another one there. It's either you play a great field or you play a great golf course. Either one will tell you where you're at, right? And so a win-win. And if you can do both, that's what you're really looking for. So I encourage kids to try to play against the best competition they can day in and day out. At your club, find the best player there. Play with them as much as you can. Play good golf, as many good golf courses you can. Even if it's not in a tournament, you go play a world-class golf course. Preston was playing world-class golf courses and shooting in the 80s sometimes, and it was like, oh my gosh, I need to learn that shot. I need to learn this shot, and don't be afraid of that. And then put yourself against the best tournaments you can. And those three things are going to really help you know what you need to work on. And I love trying to play the best courses or the best competition you can, because two things will happen. You go play against someone that's better than you. Either you're going to realize, okay, I got to get a lot better, or number two, and this happens a lot, you play with somebody and you say, wow, wait a minute, I can hang.
Yeah,
like I'm good too. And it helps their confidence. So it's a win-win either way. It's a win-win. And that's what I'm trying to say with what we were saying. Like, just throw yourself out there. Just throw yourself out there all the time.
Well, that's what I was saying earlier with the players I had that went up against Preston and, in some local Arizona events and got to the last hole with them. Those are win-wins. It reminds me of one of my favorite movies, Rocky. At the beginning of Rocky 2, they're in the hospital and Rocky wheels himself over to Apollo Creed's room and he knocks on the door and he goes, "Yo, Apollo." And he's like, "I got to ask you a question." He's like, "Okay." He's like, "Did you give me your best?" And he's like, yeah, I gave you my best. And Rocky's like, "All right, thank you." And it was like, he needed to know that he went up against the best in the world and he hung. And that you can take that and you can thrive with that. And you have no idea how that's going to drive you to some greater things in your life by taking in that confidence, because confidence is huge. You talk about skill level, but behind that skill level is a lot of will and a lot of belief and confidence to build that. So it's really, really great. And
I would say too, Howard, when you're talking about what kids like, what I would say to them, and if you need to be done with this, we can be done, but I have plenty of time. I think the important thing too is no, you're a great guy.
Okay.
I was looking forward to talking to you. You're a good man, and you've helped a ton of kids. I know, and I always get a kick out of seeing you help kids, because I know you're helping them with life too. Because we've talked about this a lot. So I respect what you do, and I'm happy to chat as long as we want. But the one thing to me is that there's a lot of choices to make in high school and college, and if you want to be special, you have to be different. And it's my kids, they appear that they're making sacrifices right now. Preston doesn't party. He goes to bed on time. He sleeps a lot. He works out. He eats good. He would seem to have given up some of the fun things in his childhood. And he's been asked that in interviews. He said, "Man, you're always golfing." And he's like, and that goes back to what we were saying before. If he's forced to do that, then he's going to resent me and my wife that we pushed that. But he loves it. And so he's making what appear to be sacrifices to maybe other people, but it doesn't feel like a sacrifice to him. And so he's an unusual kid. Grace is an unusual girl with how much they put into their games. And so I would say that if you seem like you're kind of doing what everybody else is doing, it's not going to be enough. Like, you have to be different to be special. I mean, it sounds so cheesy and so basic, but it's very true. If you want to be different, you have to be different.
Well, if you want to be great, great, because greatness takes sacrifice, and what seems like sacrifice, but I know what you're saying. It's not really sacrifice. It just takes the choices that allow you to be great. because 99.999% of the people that you're hanging with are going to do other things in their life, and they don't know what it takes to be at that level, and how much sacrifice, dedication, time, commitment, work, mind power you need, sleep, rest, everything to do this and be great. So I think that's really key for any young person that really wants to go to a high level. They really have to be ready for that process and be totally accepting of it. May not be fun at times, but 99.9% of the time, it's going to be a lot of fun. And ultimately, to achieve something that very few people on the planet do in the sport, that's something that gains a lot of respect and eventually a lot of spoils too. So
yeah, for sure.
Really nice. Well, I have one more question for you, but I just want to say, Boyd, at a relatively young age, you've accomplished so much personally and professionally, and you and your wife have raised an amazing family. So congrats to you on everything that you've done so far in the game. I can't imagine what you're going to do going forward.
Thanks, Howard.
Absolutely. And on the eve of the Masters, I wish you and Tony all the success this week. I'm sure it's going to be a great week. Yep, absolutely. And just one final question for you. If you could sum up your philosophy on your approach to life, what would it be?
It would be number one, no excuses. Be grateful. I think that changed my career. Be grateful. I think when I failed as a player, I came into, I didn't leave in a great headspace, right? I was supposed to be far better than what I ended up doing in the professional game. And it's easy to get negative. It's easy to feel like you're unlucky, self-pity. And gratitude is a massive thing for me. Yeah. And it ends up being just changing your perspective, right? When we were talking about good luck, bad luck, I don't believe in it because it's based on perception anyway, right? What you perceive as good luck or bad luck. And so to me, if I had to sum up my life stuff, is, no excuses and be grateful. And then I truly believe, like, I've just wanted out of my kids, whether they golfed or did anything, I wanted them to have a world-class work ethic. I wanted that, and I've tried to push it their path, because I think that's truly, when you see what appear to be the hardest workers in the world, they have world-class work ethics, but they are doing something they're obsessed with or passionate about. So I'd say find your passion and work for it. Spend your whole life doing it, trying to pursue your passion. Be grateful and no excuses. And I think you'll end up in a pretty good spot.
That's awesome. That's outstanding advice. I cannot thank you enough for taking the time here tonight to chat about this and offer such great insight and wisdom from so many great years to, your own self being at the top of the world and your kids, and then of course teaching some of the top players in the world. So I really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you back out on the tour when this COVID thing clears up, and I'm back out there as well. I hope you have a great week, and thanks again for being here.
Yeah. And thanks for having me on, Howard. I appreciate it. You've done great things for a lot of players, and I've always respected you, and I was excited to be on with you tonight. So that was awesome. A good time chatting.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks, Boyd. All right, everybody. Thanks for being here. Please share the podcast with people would be interested or could help in their lives. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.